Hey, nurses and healthcare providers. I am Rita Batchley, and this is Coffee with a Nurse's Nurse, where you will get tips and strategies on how to put the self-care back into healthcare. And today we have a huge topic to discuss. It's nurses versus hospitals. But first and foremost, I wanted to start out and just ask for a little invocation, a little prayer, if you will, for a friend of mine. Her daughter is struggling. She had a serious. She's in the ICU and she is fighting for her life right now. And little Sarah out there, I know you're not a little girl anymore. You're a woman, but you'll always be little to me because I remember when you were born, and just God bless you and hope you're getting better. Just wanted to put that out there and start this out. But today, nurses, we are discussing the case of Radonda Vaught, who last week was convicted, or not convicted, found guilty, actually convicted of a negligent homicide and gross negligence, which is like, wow. This is unprecedented because most cases do not get tried for a criminal trial. They go into liability, a patient's wrongful, negligence, or if a hospital gets sued, it usually gets settled out of court and there's no criminal charges pressed. So this is really different than any case. And first and foremost, I want to just say that these are my opinions. And the Nurse's Nurse asks you to formulate your own opinion on the subject by educating yourself and taking action accordingly to what you believe you need to do to support this nurse, Radonda Vaught, or nursing profession in general, which is, how can you do that? And what can you do? You need to stick around to find out. And I'm going to put that up later in my live stream. You're going to want to watch for that slide. And first off, we'll start out the timeline. What happened? Well, on March 25th, Radonda Vaught was found guilty. But the problem was all the way back in December 26th of 2017, a fatal dose of medication was given by accident. The nurse Vaught, she was working and she typed in the first two letters and she wound up giving the wrong med, and the patient subsequently died. Now, Nurse Vaught admitted to the wrongdoing immediately. She figured it out. The patient coded while she was getting a CAT scan and died. And the nurse took responsibility completely, openly, honestly, admitted her wrongdoing, and filled out an incident report and went to the powers that be. She lost her job like a week later. The hospital said, look, you didn't follow hospital policy. You didn't, which she admitted she didn't follow the 5 rights, the right medication, the right dose, the right patient, and for the right reason, all these things that we are pounded on in nursing school, and rightfully so, because it is dangerous. But that's not what this is about. This is about the fact that Vanderbilt fired the nurse and they did not do their due diligence, which is reporting themselves to CMS. CMS is the Centers for Medicaid and Medi-Cal Services. And when a hospital doesn't get accredited for CMS, they can't stay open. They don't get the monies from the government to stay open. And they did not report themselves. So 18 months later, after Nurse Vaught left the hospital, she's called back in by the registered, the nursing board. And she's brought before the board. She had been cleared. The family had settled out of court. They were not interested in a criminal lawsuit against the nurse, but CMS got reported. And so CMS got this report, and all of a sudden they're like going to take money from Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt reopens the case. And this is where it gets sticky. So if you're with me so far, I want you to hear me loud and clear that the likelihood for nurses to report themselves after this it just doesn't add up. Nurses aren't going to do that. And what we have here is this civil versus criminal trial. So what happens with most cases in liability, if a situation in a hospital goes before a judge, it's under the civil on the left-hand side of this diagram. You have an attorney, you have a judge, but you don't have a trial of jury by jury, which would be a criminal. So there's an injured party, there's an offense, it's filed in court. This never happened, but only after CMS was brought to their attention. The DA prosecuting the case, all of a sudden, he was a prior professor at Vanderbilt Hospital University. And all of a sudden, he's going to prosecute this case. He is throwing the book at Nurse Vaught for reckless homicide and abuse, negligence. And so the Tennessee Board of Nursing, let's follow this, is appointed by the governor. The governor of Tennessee receives campaign money from Vanderbilt University Hospital. So all of a sudden, this is getting real sticky here. Like, why do they have ties to Vanderbilt? How should this trial have been brought to another area outside so that Nurse Vaught could get a decent, fair trial? Was there a conflict of interest? And the nurses weighing in on social media, thousands of nurses are just filling the pages on Show Me Your Stethoscope, the Million Nurse March, social media, Facebook page, and they are just livid because the hospital isn't being punished, but the nurse is. And already with the pandemic going on, nurses are just suffering from what we call moral distress. And I've shown this before in other talks, but moral distress is when it arises when one knows the right thing to do, but the institution doesn't have the resources, or they will not let the nurse pursue the right course of action. So when you have really poor staffing, or you have a government saying, or the CDC even saying that people don't need to wear masks, when nurses know scientifically that masks work and they prevent the spread of the coronavirus. So nurses have been blindsided left and right by the pandemic, by this moral distress. And now we have another further moral distress when it comes to hospitals pressing criminal charges against nurses for making mistakes. And this is even, why this is the worst is because nurses have this thing called incident reports. And I know everyone's heard of incident reports. You're not supposed to get in trouble for incident reports. Like, say, I drew up this medication and gave it. Yeah, that's exactly what Nurse Vaught did. She reported herself. Nurses aren't going to want to do that. Secondly, nurses just don't plain want to be nurses anymore. I tried to hire someone to do spring cleaning for me, like a deep cleaning on my house. They charged like $50. They wanted, when it came all said and done, like close to $50 an hour. I was like, wait a minute, that's more than nurses make. How is this possible? And I know, like, in different areas, like, housekeepers make more money, and God bless housekeepers, nothing against them making, if they can make that money, it's great. But why would you want to become a nurse when you have all this liability? You're holding someone's life in your hands, literally, figuratively. And then when you do the right thing, you get thrown under the bus. So that's pretty, I'm trying not to be negative, but it's kind of hard not to be negative at this point, because it just feels like the Tennessee Board of Registered Nurses needed to place the blame on someone so that they could justify CMS payments back to the university hospital. But this is a conspiracy theory. Like I said, this is an opinion. I don't really know. But here's one of the ways you can support Nurse Radonda Vaught. You can take a screenshot of this, and there's 7 different ways. There's all kinds of addresses. There's change.org petition for clemency, and there's over 86,000 signatures on there for nurses to, or anyone can sign this petition. You can write to the governor and about this and give your opinions. Also, there is writing to Nurse Vaught's lawyer and giving her support. Hopefully the judge will not give her time in jail over this. Her sentencing will be May 19th. She's up for sentencing. So if we get these letters out there, we can write and help with this sentencing for this criminal charges that she has been found guilty of. And yeah, write in the comment if you think if this was fair, because I have my opinion. I believe that I don't think she should have lost her license. How is she supposed to pay these fines if she doesn't even have a job? Being a bedside nurse isn't the only way to work as a registered nurse. I think she needed to be remediated. I don't think she'd ever make that kind of mistake again after what happened. And it sounds like she never had the intent, any malicious intent to harm anyone. Why would you take away her license? I know firing her seems just, but not to lose her license. But one of the things I found interesting is number 7 on this list. So this is for Vanderbilt nurses only, because right now the American Nurses Association is they accredit hospitals. It's called magnet you get a magnet status, it's called. And a magnet certification is when nurses, it's called for nursing excellence, So right now, Vanderbilt University Hospital is up for magnet certification, recertification. So they're in the midst of doing a survey or checking out that hospital to see if they will requalify as a magnet status, because that tells the community, that gives you like a 5+ star rating to go to that hospital, because it's such a good hospital. Now, I don't actually think I believe they should not get a magnet recertification. And let me know in the comments what you think, but I don't think that the hospital, Vanderbilt, should have some repercussion and some punishment for what happened, because they did not do their own they didn't do their own self-reporting, and they should have. So the way that I believe I am going to do, what I am going to do is write to the American Nurses Association magnet program and let them know how I feel. And here is that address. So we could give a public comment here. Feel free to take your camera out, your phone, and take a screenshot of this, because I think that every nurse should sit down, or even families, patients, other people should sit down and write to this magnet recognition program, email them, or write them a letter and tell them what you think. And I personally will be writing them a letter to let them know how I feel like they do not support the bedside nurses, because magnet programs basically support the hospitals and the American Hospital Association. I don't see them uh, helping nurses when they have an 8-to-1 patient ratio. I don't see them helping or allowing nurses shared governance. I don't see magnet hospitals getting a nurse in every boardroom of their hospitals. And yeah, hospitals are pushing to create systems on top of systems to prevent human error, but then they forget about the human, about the nurse. This complacency shouldn't be possible. And yet the hospitals are creating environments where complacency is becoming all too common in order to time manage. All these protocols to protect the patient, but what about the nurses? Protecting the nurses. And this is, what I've been saying with union versus non-union. We have an association, the American Nurses Association. They say they represent 4.3 million nurses in this country, but you can't find how many nurses are actually dues paying members who are enrolled in the American Nurses Association. I went online and looked for it. I actually wrote a email. I contacted them to get the exact number, but I believe that the number is somewhere around 170,000. Now, out of 4 million, I don't know about your math skills, but I know that 4 million, that's not 4 million. That's 170,000 nurses are actually dues paying members of the American Nurses Association. Whereas there's 175,000 members of the National Nurses United. And that is a dues paying union that represents nurses in collective bargaining. And that is how to support each other. Because if we can't have a system that would go to bat for us and get us lawyers and help us, like a union, like National Nurses United, come on, nurses. I'm seeing all over social media how we need a national union. We have one. It's called National Nurses United. And your hospital doesn't have to belong to that, you don't have to have an agency shop to belong to it. It's $50 a year. And if 4 million nurses joined together, and even we put $1 towards, if every nurse put $1 towards lobbying these Congress people and getting a national nurse to patient ratio system, we'd be doing a lot better. So yeah, what do we learn from all this? Protect yourself, nurses. Reduce your risk by protecting yourself. Get yourself some liability insurance. Follow your safety checks and don't skip ahead. Get someone else to work with you. Follow someone, because people get hurt when you're in a rush. And self-reporting isn't a protection for you per se, but it is a protection for a business. And how did hospitals become the business model that nurses have to kowtow to? And this is why we need a union to stand strong, stand united, and stand safe. So currently, we have the next, wrong one. Yeah, so National Nurses United right now is doing a safe staffing district advocate workshop. That's tomorrow. And I put the Zoom link down below. I actually shortened it for you on Bitly. I love that Bitly app. So it takes a huge, long link and it links it down. So if you just copy that HTTPS and take a screenshot, like I said, and copy it into your browser, you can get onto this meeting tomorrow. They'll send you the link. Go to National Nurses United, get onto the the action workshop. What they're doing right now is they're working on the Nursing Staffing Standards for Hospital Patient Safety and Quality Care Act to require hospitals to develop annual safe staffing plans with the input of direct care nurses. Now, that's what I call a union, an association that sticks up for the bedside nurses and asks us what we need. So, because even before the pandemic, nurses have been pleading with hospitals to give us the staff that we need. Yet hospitals say they can't find enough nurses and they can't afford to pay permanent nurses more in wages. This comprehensive report that the American nurses put out shows that there is no shortage of registered nurses in this country. There is a shortage of nurses that will work under these horrible conditions. They need better permanent nursing jobs where registered nurses are fully valued for their work, where they celebrate nurses, not just with pizza parties, but with good paying jobs and voices in the boardroom. So please come and join me. I will be joining this group. Again, there's the link, the very bottom, bit.ly 3UFHBLA. And the nurses they have a plan on how to get the Safe Staffing Act passed, HR 3165. It's the Hospital Patient Safety Quality Care Act, and to further empower nurses to get nurses in every boardroom, because bedside nurses are the true, we're in the trenches. We see and know what's going on. And to put a Band-Aid over us and to put a Band-Aid over our mouth and tell us we can't be honest about human error because we're going to be thrown under the bus and tried as criminals, it's just wrong on so many levels. So please join me every Tuesday at 2. Tell your friends, share the link, come on to Facebook, or actually my YouTube channel, where you can, here you go. You could go to my channel and subscribe, and you'll get the latest and greatest from the nurse's nurse. And nurses need leadership. Nurses need to stick together. I know that this stuff works. I worked in California nursing as a bedside nurse. Before and after ratios, the ratios work. The people that say that there are no studies that ratio works, well, come to California. Why are all the nurses trying to work in California? Because it does work. Nurses are respected, and when we say no, we can't do it, we are respected in California. And I see a comment up, so I'm going to try to get over there and see. Oh, hey, Patty. It's good to see people checking in. And please, like I said, put some more comments of what you feel on this case of nurses being charged for as a criminal versus liability or civil lawsuits, and how Vanderbilt Hospital has literally raised a whole new level of need for nurses to band together and form alliances and get the vote out. Don't vote for these governors who are attached to our board of registered nurses that are going to throw us under the bus. Nurses need the backing of unions. We need the backing of leadership, and we need money to do that. So unfortunately, joining unions means paying your association dues, but it's worth it because we're dealing with mega corporations that have tons and tons of lawyers on their payroll, and nurses don't stand a chance against that. So I hate to sound negative, but please tell your friends, let's do this, nurses. There's 4 million of us. Let's do it. See you next week. Nurses Nurse Tuesday, where you will get tips and strategies on how to take care of yourself.